So, Namaskar. In yesterday's conversation with the people, the question came up was that if Shiva is ultimate consciousness and is invisible, does it mean that we don't have to find Shiva in temples, idols, or images? Now, it's very interesting because the path of learning and spiritual growth is a very interesting subject. Let me share a small analogy for people to understand. Uh, so, when a student has to go for the first time to understand new learnings, if the student wants to become a scientist or an engineer or a doctor, what do you think? That the student will be straightway enrolled in a university for a PhD or for an MBBS or for an engineering? No, the student will not be enrolled into the higher institutions. The student will have to begin from the lower levels of learning to understand and relate. So, just as a person begins in nursery before reaching the higher level of a PhD, similarly, spiritual growth moves through different stages. So, images, symbols, and rituals are like foundational tool that help an individual to grasp the complex spiritual concepts, because there are when you talk about the nirgun and nirakar and invisible aspects of Shiva, they're very complex spiritual concepts, and the beginner has to understand the fundamentals, the basics. And when a beginner starts with the basics and then gradually with that understanding, the beginner builds on the new understandings of that divinity that we are talking about, the ultimate consciousness. And this all happens in a step by step manner. So, at nursery level, the student is taken through basic crayons, symbols, images, small activities. So, if a student has to earn the concept of two, the student will not be shown simply two. Before that, they will have to, in order to understand two, they will have to be given the two apples to count. And if they have to understand three or five or eight or nine, they will be given different numbers so that they can start counting, and then they can resonate that with the images of two and one and three. So, similarly, in a spiritual philosophy, using idols and images or symbols, it gives a sadhak or a person who is in the process of understanding the intangible concepts, the tangibility is added to that, so that tangibility helps an individual to connect with that divine concepts, which are very abstract and sometimes a person is very difficult to understand, which otherwise is very difficult to conceptualize for a person. So, Shivalinga or the image of a Shiva or a temple helps a beginner to understand a representation of that formlessness of Shiva. And as an individual progresses from lower levels of schools to higher levels of schools, they are able to understand and connect through these examples, through these small paths with the larger and bigger path that's in front of them. So, in spirituality, the devotee reaches a level where they can perceive the divine essence in everything and everyone beyond specific forms or symbols. But for that understanding to reach at that level, it's very important for a person to go through all these basic steps, so that gradually one is able to relate. And one more thing is very important to remember: when one recognizes that ultimate consciousness through passing on through these steps, they don't discard these steps, because ultimately they see unity in their diversity. So, at that time, they don't see the temple is useless. They don't see the idols are useless. They don't see the images are useless. Because when you see diversity, when you have moved through diversity and you have reached to that level of unity, you also appreciate that diversity, because it is that diversity in which you see that unity as well, because Shiva is also visible in that diversity. It may be a symbol, it may be an image, it may be an idol, it may be temple. So the true dualism, who truly believe that they are non-dualistic. True non-dualism or true monoism is appreciating both diversity of forms and their underlying unity. So that's fundamentally very important when it comes to Kashmir Shaivism. It's like, for example, if I have to give another analogy, just like the waves are very unique with different heights and shapes and speed in the ocean, they're all ultimately made up of the same ocean. So a wave cannot see it's different from the ocean. So waves are part of the same ocean. So in spirituality also, while each individual wave appears distinct, they are all expressions of the same divine consciousness. So recognizing that all waves are part of the same ocean is how one understands that all this diversity is part of that same Shiva. So people who have practiced Kashmir Shaivism, they will see that in Kashmir Shaivism, the ultimate consciousness is indeed described as Nirgun or Nirakar, like what we call without attributes or without form. Those sadhaks, they have recognized that the supreme consciousness or that Param Shiva, it transcends all these material forms, limitations, and characteristics. And but it still will be existing in all those material forms. But as you progress, so your level of understanding of Shiva will transcend to a different levels, and you may transcend beyond images and idols and temples, but you will continue to appreciate that, because that is also a way the Shiva manifests himself. Because Shiva, हम कहते हैं ना, कण कण में है, it's in the each piece. So to such questions, the answer is Shiva is in everything. But there's a gradual progress through which people learn and understand Shiva, and the basic level to higher levels of Shiva philosophy tells us to appreciate Shiva in every form, even when you reach on the highest level. Because when you are at the highest level, you will automatically appreciate everything. And that's the true Shaivism.